The Bread and Butter Collective is a collection of hospitality professionals working together to help strengthen our industry to build strong culture, community, and sustainability.
I'm Calen McNeil.
And I'm Sam Jones.
And this
is the Bread and Butter Podcast.
Welcome to the Bread and Butter Podcast. We're back together. The gang is back. Hey,
Oh
Sam.
my God, Calen, long time no see, brother. How
It's
you doing?
literally been, well, last time I saw you was we filmed or we recorded it through Zoom.
I know you
I
were
believe.
in Vegas.
Yeah,
and
I was in Las Vegas.
Boring old Victoria, and you were in Party Town.
Party Town.
Is
Party
that
time.
so? Does Vegas live up to that name right now? Is it Party Town?
Well, I didn't partake in any partying, but I imagine there was some partying. Obviously, with COVID, you have to take some precautions. I did go to a concert, the Violent Femmes, and it was a vaccinated
way.
concert, which was great. I felt safe, and it was really enjoyable. So there's parts of it that felt like normal, but it was within the confines of vaccine status.
Yeah.
So that obviously made you feel better about participating. And it was, I had the biggest and best time I've had there. And it's not about partying for me. It was about just a sense of normalcy. I was there to play in the World Series of Poker. And it was a double vaxxed event. So anybody there had to be vaccinated twice. And it just felt really safe. And, I was a little bit concerned going in about the political narrative and, and the bipolarization of the vaccine and unvaccinated and all that kind of stuff. But literally everybody there was just there to enjoy the game of poker, enjoy company. There was like talk of sports, and there's just it was like a complete escape from the pandemic, which it was very refreshing for me. I was very apprehensive to go, but at some point we have to lean into our vaccines. COVID will be with us forever, I'm assuming. So, provided that, there's precautions taken, I think it makes sense to, try to carry on with normal life as best as you can within the confines of that.
Yeah.
So
I agree. We just had to keep on going regardless of what's going on.
Well, I sort of thought that right from the beginning is like, okay, there's a bunch of unknowns, but in the end of the day, we just have to use logic and then take guidance from professionals that have studied these things for all the years. And, there's going to be disagreements with, plans and procedures and regulations and all that stuff. But, I'm not an epidemiologist. I've never studied, pandemics. I don't know anything. So, I'm just going to listen to what the professionals tell me to do and follow the rules. And, so far it's worked out.
Yeah. When you said you were a little scared going into it, not knowing what you were going to expect. I felt that when Trump got elected and going down to the States, I was really concerned about just the conversation I was going to have, and got down there and I quickly realized that, people are people, and they leave the politics up to the politicians for the most
part. I mean,
and I didn't encounter anyone who was abrasive or so entrenched in their position that they couldn't have a normal conversation. I think those are the extremes that we see, and that's not the reality of the situation.
I think by and large, I would agree for sure. I know, obviously, the one thing that gets me to go to the States, and in particular Las Vegas, is the World Series of Poker. So I've been going every year for the last 20 years. So I've seen the ebb and flow of political talk, and it was never worse than in 2016 with the Trump and Hillary Clinton. I just saw like some real stark difference in conversations, and that's why I was a little leery this time, just because of the political landscape hasn't gotten any better, the rhetoric, and then obviously the polarization of the COVID. And I feel like my sentiment about the US right now is that it's kind of like the seams are starting to crack, and I think in some aspects they're kind of blown wide open, where when you can't separate the science from religion and politics, that all of it becomes, tribal, then it's scary for me because, I have opinions, and I obviously, when you're in a poker tournament, you're there for the duration, and it's kind of like prison if you're sitting at a table of people that are just talking nonsense. So, I was worried about that, and also just public health, and I hadn't been to the States in a couple of years because of the pandemic, and just to see and to put yourself in that situation. And I think in any other time too, it's with guns and that kind of stuff down there, you have to be a little bit more vigilant when you're in the States. And I think that's just a matter of proper precaution, because even though I'm sure it's a very small amount, there was just recently another vehicle that drove through a parade, and and it's like when you're in a group of people down there, I don't think you can just be as casual as you are up here with it. Like, understand.
Got your eyes open.
Yeah, your eyes open, and just if you're going to be doing that, I think you just have to take a few extra precautions, and which is kind of sad.
It is, but if you didn't have your eyes open, your head up, you would not know that the Violent Femmes were playing in Vegas.
Exactly.
I mean,
exactly.
Oh my God, I have to go back there. How was the show?
Oh,
was
it was amazing. Yeah, it was really, really good. And knowing that, you had to show your vaccine status and your passport and all that stuff at the outset made me feel a lot better about it. But it was just great. It was just nice to be in an environment that, kind of was a throwback to the way it was pre-pandemic.
Now, was that just a one-time concert? Or are they playing Vegas like Celine Dion's playing
No,
Vegas?
I think it was just a one-time concert at Hard Rock Hotel, is now the Virgin Hotel, I guess, or something. So, I guess they do a concert series. So
Okay.
Violent Femmes, I think, just played that one night.
Man, I saw them play Canada Day in 1990.
Oh, that's crazy.
In Barrie, Ontario, with the Tragically Hip and Spirit of the West. And,
amazing.
Yeah, it was an outdoor concert. It was unreal. It was
well,
so
and that's
good.
where I hope we can get back to. I mean, who knows how long this is going to last, but assuming it's going to last another year, hopefully we can get to a place where people can go out and do these things safely. And it so enhances life, and I think entertainment and all that stuff is just a good distraction from the day-to-day grind. So when you don't have that for a long period of time, I mean, I missed it, and I literally, when I came back, I feel like I gained like 10 years of my life, just in being relaxed, and also perspective too, because when I was down there, like, I'm playing poker for money, and there's sizable swings in winning and losing as far as your physical, how much money you win or lose, and I lost money, but I had such a good time, and it was such a good break that it didn't matter. I mean, I could have lost twice as much money, and I would have still had an amazing time.
It was probably, and I'm guessing, the price of a holiday.
It was a very expensive holiday.
Yeah,
but,
okay.
but
you're in Vegas.
I'm in Vegas,
Yeah.
and I obviously, don't wager more than I can afford to lose. But for me, it's just about just that perspective where I was enjoying something, like it's a hobby. I enjoy it, and I just thoroughly enjoyed every aspect of it. So I wasn't attached to the result of winning or losing. I was just there to play the best poker I could play, which I did. And the results kind of take care of themselves. You can't control stuff. So it really allowed me to get into the zen of it, because I would play day after day, 12 hours, 12 hours, 12 hours, and not get any financial result. But I just really enjoyed how much I played and how well I played. And I got unlucky in key spots, but I put myself in a position, if I didn't get unlucky, I would have gone really deep and I would have made some money. So I just really got into the process rather than worried about how I was doing. Obviously, you can't continue to lose money day after day after day, but I
Not
had
without
some.
a sugar mama.
Well, I don't have a sugar mama. Well, maybe a little bit of a sugar mama, but it's detaching yourself from, like, it's recognizing why you're there and what the purpose of you going there. Like, I didn't go down there to make a living. I didn't go down there to just win everything. Obviously, if that happens, great, but it was just really going down there to enjoy myself and to play a game that I love. And I think this trip, out of all the 20 trips previous, I really got the experience of the value of just going there without any expectations and kind of separating yourself from the results, because you can't control luck, right? And I think that's a very, very pertinent thing when it comes to talking about business too, and just being in charge of what you can control. I could control how I played certain hands. I could control the conversation at the table to some degree. I could control my own emotions, whether I win or lose.
Right.
And I just really got into that, and just woke up every day and excited to play regardless of what happened. And I think that really kind of centered me at a time where, especially coming back to what I came back to with flooding and the colossal impact of the environmental stuff that's going on. We're still in a pandemic. There's still supply chain issues and all those things that would, real life stuff that is totally out of our control. But I think for me, approaching it, if I hadn't gone and had this experience, I think I would be a lot more anxious in light of everything that's going on, because there is serious supply chain risks. There's business risks. We're still in a pandemic. Now we're dealing with environmental stuff that we should have probably prepared for better sooner.
A long time ago.
And it just comes down to for me, it's about just applying what we know, and we knew for a long time there's going to be environmental impacts of climate change, and we've seen it over the years with fires, and now we're seeing it with severe rain.
Atmospheric
rivers that are coming through.
Wow.
But we've got these, this infrastructure that's dated, and nobody's done anything about it. You talk about the flooding in the Fraser Valley, and there's a river south in the States where they actually warned of flood ahead of it, right? So you can at least evacuate, get prepared, or whatever. But we've known that our dike is probably at risk from flooding from that river that's south of the border. And we also have, just the dynamics of that valley, and it is a flood zone.
Sure
and
is.
Why are we not building better infrastructure to prepare for that? And, it's easy to say that now, but we've known about this for a long time. So I think rather than, doing things that send a virtue signal in some aspects of, like, oh, we're going to cancel the oil and gas sector, we're going to go electric, we're going to do this. We need to actually talk about practical solutions on how we're going to mitigate what's coming. Like, that's something that's coming at us. There's nothing we can do at this point. There's zero that we can do as a society in our country that's going to impact the overall globe. It's going to be so minute. But what we can do is we can start looking at the different things that we can practically do that protect us from the impacts of it.
Right.
And that is something, humans are mobile. They have been throughout the years. We can build dikes. We can build barriers. We can do a bunch of stuff that can help mitigate the impact of it. And I've yet to see those projects happen.
Well, we can build all those things, but can we build ourselves out of where we're at right now? Is there the global pressure? Is there the need for it yet? Have we been pushed up against the wall far enough?
The problem with it
we're gonna
is
come out fighting again.
I don't know, because to date we're not.
No.
So I think there's pockets. I think Canada has been trying. I mean, we were one of the first adopters with carbon taxes and things like that. But if you actually look at, is our emissions dropping? No. Emissions, are they slowing? Maybe. I don't know. But there isn't, I mean, we've been doing these things. I mean, I think BC's had a carbon tax for 10 or 15 years or something, and our emissions have climbed every year. So, okay, I think there's certain policies that are practical, but okay, where is that money going? How are we using those resources to help ourselves?
Yeah.
So because we are such a small percentage of the global emissions, like we can landlock everything and shut down everything, and that train is still going, and it's going like a bullet.
Yeah.
So until the big emitters like the United States and China and India and these things decide that they're going to do something different, but we're still exporting coal to China. So as a country, how do we justify shutting down our entire energy sector while we're still exporting coal to China?
Well, I kind of think it's not necessarily a country decision. I think it's beyond that. I think these are big corporations who are making these decisions on behalf or with our countries, and I don't think we have as much control maybe as we'd like to think we have, which is why we're at where we're at is we don't have that kind of control. And
well, people think, and that's the problem, is you have like millions of people independently thinking for themselves. And they've all, obviously the media has a part to play in that as well, and the government on how they're going to actually control different things. But at this point, I think there needs to be a real focus on infrastructure and actually, mitigating these events, whether it be in mitigating fire in the summer, and trying to mitigate rain and just flow of the water. Like it's happening. It's upon us. We're in it, but we're still talking about zero emissions by 2050. Like the emissions that are in the air right now, that's causing what's happening now. So barring technology that can suck it out, and I'm still optimistic that
I'm hoping for that one.
Yeah, and it'll eventually. Humans are very adaptable. We're very creative. We will solve it, and it will come from science most likely and innovation. But we need to get practical on, okay, next winter or even this winter, like we're not through the winter yet. There's still another, system that's coming through this week. So what is that going to happen? But now we're building dikes and we're doing things, and we have to rebuild the Coquihalla, the highways destroyed and all the stuff. Is like, well, why did that event destroy that? Like, how do we mitigate we could see the mudslides, the potential areas that are going to happen. How do we build some infrastructure now that can protect us over the next 2, 3, 4 years so that we don't have to completely shut down? Like stopping, China from producing emissions, like that is like a way bigger thing. So I think politically you have to leverage what you got to put political pressure on them, through whether it be through the UN or through any other means. But us independently, reducing our emissions or any of that kind of stuff, is that ship had sailed, in my opinion. Like we're literally in it, and barring any innovation that comes up over the next 5 to 10 years, it's going to get worse before it gets better, regardless of what we do. And it doesn't mean don't continue to try to lower your emissions or do that kind of stuff, but at some point you've got to shift to a preventative and practical standpoint where we are going to have these catastrophic events, and they're going to happen repeatedly.
So how do we deal with
how do we deal with that?
How do we mitigate the damage that causes to the economy?
100%. And I'm pretty sure they've done reports on this, and they've done studies on critical infrastructure and all that, but no one's talking about it.
Right.
What they're talking about is, oh, that storm destroyed this, or that city burnt down because of this. And it's like, okay, so are we going to keep having those conversations, or are we going to then just go to a practical investment standpoint where we are going to invest in mitigating the impacts of the climate change that we're in, right?
Right. So as business owners, then it's our responsibility to do what we can in our sphere of influence. And how do you see that changing in the next couple of years? Do you see small businesses having to be more proactive and more involved in their community, and how we deal and how we're contributing and how we're reacting to what's going on in the world?
Well, I think any good citizen, whether it be a corporation or an individual, should be doing what they can to make a positive difference.
Do we need to be speaking out more? Do we need to be forcing the hand of our government? Do we need to be storming Parliament and saying this? We've had enough.
Well, the issue with it is that nobody, in my opinion, nobody really knows who to yell at and what to yell at. I mean, it's easy to yell at the people in power. I mean, people are yelling at them all the time.
Yeah.
But I think, if I was the king or queen to make all the rules and decisions, I would actually do what a lot of people would criticize me for, and I would actually lean into our Canadian energy sector, and I would look to lead from that point of view. Obviously, it's very controversial. All of my businesses are carbon neutral and have been since inception. Like Big Wheel Burgers, 10 years this week.
Wow.
And we've been carbon neutral. I guess we started on that journey 10 years ago, and it took us about a year to 2 years to become carbon neutral, and been carbon neutral the entire time. So as a business, I feel like we're doing our part. But, when you've got a government that is not encouraging people to be carbon neutral, they're not. They're tackling from the individual and the purchase thing. Okay, buy an electric vehicle. But when you look at the analysis of the footprint of an electric vehicle versus a combustion engine, it takes about 5 years to make it equal in the initial emissions from the building and the construction to the running of it for 5 years. The electrical vehicles start drastically cutting down emissions after year 5 based on the data, but the average person only owns their vehicle for 4 or 5 years.
Right,
so then it's gone, and they're buying another one. Yeah, exactly. So
buying the other one, it's
like
problem.
Yeah. So there's so much confusion on what the right thing to do is. I think as a global leader, if you want to be a global leader, then you have to approach it from the global standpoint, and you have to do things like landlocking your coal and just stop exporting coal, expropriate the mines, invest in allowing them to transition out of coal, and just stop exporting coal. So, I mean, until China can't get enough coal, I mean, there's stats. I mean, when I was really into this, like 4 or 5 years ago, I think probably in 2015, there's 800 new coal-fired power plants being built in China that year. And you're just like, okay, so, when they're somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 or 50% of the emissions or something like this, then why are we not advocating more in that area and applying pressure and creating alliances with our like-minded people to try to influence China to get off coal? And it's not to say that China isn't doing anything. I've spent a ton of time in China, and I took the bullet train from the south to north to Beijing, and there was like solar fields, and there was wind and all that stuff, but it doesn't change the fact that a lot of that stuff is supported by coal-fired power plants and things like this. So it looks good, but I don't know that we're going to transition to save us in time with the energy choices we have as far as solar and wind go. I'm not an expert in this, but it's just, we have something that we've created. It's called nuclear energy, which is doesn't produce any emissions other than the waste of the nuclear waste.
Yeah.
But there's technology
They're
now
figuring that out now too.
well, they are, because they're using spent uranium as fuel. So now you have all this uranium that's been stockpiled all over in the States in particular. There's like
Hanford
massive depots.
Hanford.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's all of that stuff. So I think, trying to make this more complex than it needs to be, I think you just start at the top and work your way back down. And, I think a lot of environmental groups are like, there is no bridge fuel, and, but natural gas is a cleaner burning emission. So, and then you've got jurisdictions that produce it more environmentally friendly than others, and Canada is one of them. So when you're supplying less energy to the world because we're divesting from it, we're not stopping everybody from buying it. It's not like oil supply and that kind of demand is going up, and it will continue to go up by all reports for the next 10, 15 years. So like, how do you just have real conversations with, knowing what we know now, how do we lower our emissions and how do we become good consumers of product? And, I think Canada's positioned beautifully because we could stand up on our environmental platform as far as how we've managed that sector. So, I mean, that's our Canadian energy sector is definitely the most conscientious from an environment standpoint, but also human rights standpoint as well. My brother is actually in that industry, and he went on a trip to Iran, and that was back when the oil market collapsed, and he was basically looking for other markets to sell his wares, like trying to survive. And in Iran, they don't have storage capacity. So they basically literally, and oil just pops out of the sand, like you put a straw in it and oil pops up. And they literally light that stuff on fire, right, to burn it because it would just keep flowing. So you've got those jurisdictions, like, Iran and Saudi Arabia and stuff that can just produce it like very inexpensively, but have no environmental standards at all. So they're basically undermining everything we're doing times 10. But that's the reality. Right. So now you can say, oh, well, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. That doesn't change the reality. So I think it's, for me, you almost feel a little helpless.
Well, and it is that helplessness. If you're saying that we need to attack from the top, which I agree, like start at the top, that's so far removed from where the individual person is in the world that how can we get like excited or feel we're contributing or that we're a positive influence on that or that we have any influence at all. It really feels like there's a disconnect from what we all know we have to do and why we have to do it. From our standpoint, it feels like, well, what can we do? It's like the answers seem obvious but unattainable because it's not up to us to be able to do it. I guess I'm always trying to look for the answer that I can control and that I have some input for. And I don't see anything except recycling, walking more, don't buy anything new. I mean, there's
consumerism is driving a lot of it, right? And even when you look at, you watch documentaries like Seaspiracy that talks about the ocean, and I watched that documentary, and there was some criticism about the facts and the data in that, but I mean, you've got this largest, carbon capture in the world, which is the ocean, and you see all the things that we're doing, so we could eat fish and all that, and even the challenges of fishing, and you have to go further and further and further out, and food sustainability in these countries that are primarily fishing based, and then you look at these nets that come and just kind of release all this carbon that's been captured already, like in the coral reefs and the seaweed and all that stuff, and then he just releases it back in the universe. It just is like, where do you, like, you see that and you're like, oh, and then I watched another one about the cotton industry and clothing manufacturers and how bad they are for the environment, and you're just like, okay, now I can't buy clothes. And it's like, okay. And then you look at the other thing is like how, 100 years ago, the average life was like 50 years, right? So the only reason why it's now 80 in the modern world, or the
in the
developed countries is to do with energy. That's literally it. And the poor countries, how they get out is by having access to affordable energy. That's what lifted us out.
Except for countries like Nigeria, not to be contradictory, but you look at a country like Nigeria, well, they are one of the oil-rich countries, but I mean,
corruption.
Controlled by 5 American companies who don't give a shit about the
and corrupt officials too, right? So again.
I heard something the other day about Nigeria. They had $20 billion just kind of not make their budget a couple of years ago. it just
disappeared.
It just disappeared.
Yeah.
It's like that's a lot of money, and people can't go down to their watering hole now in Nigeria and catch their fish.
No.
It's just contaminated.
No.
It's just it's awful.
And yeah, I mean you can go through the whole thing, and even if you look at countries that have food insecurity like Ethiopia and Somalia and things like that, they're now being forced to, and this comes from the fact that there is overfishing. So then it seems they can't go all that way. So now they've got boats. So what do? They start pirating, right? So like, okay, well, we've got a new economy now. Let's just steal stuff. And you can't blame them. They're surviving, right? And, so you can get overwhelmed with all of those things. And that's where I always go back to, let's just go back to the basics. Let's start at the top. Let's eliminate the dirtiest fuel, and then let's clean, and let's invest in innovation. It's like anything. Economies get created over issues, and it comes down to like homelessness as well, and the opioid crisis. There's people that just make a fortune around the problem. So where's the incentive to fix the problem when people are profiting from it? So yeah, it's gonna be a lot slower rather than just going, okay, how do we end this? Like, how do we, regardless of who benefits, how do we fix it? And, with the environmental thing too, it's like all of these nonprofits and all of these businesses are all making money off the issue. Yeah. So where's the incentive to do it? And ultimately it's got to come from the top. So either it comes from business leaders or it comes from government to mandate it. But you have to think deeper on the issue. Like everything in 4-year cycles, because that's the election cycles.
Right.
You're really captivating people for 2 to 3 years, and that's it. So how are you building like sustainable long-term policy in 4-year cycles or 3-year cycles or 2-year cycles?
You're offering promises in those 4-year
and it's just total
cycles.
Bullshit. And just such a lack of accountability too. Right. So so you're going to hold people accountable? Like now you don't even feel like you can hold anybody accountable. When you've got 20% of the population voting in Canada, that's who voted in, the last election, the leading party it's a minority, but, they're in control, and that's 20% elected by 20% of the population. And I mean, that's our system. So that is what it is. But, so those 20% who voted for them are either happy or sad or whatever, but they're not having to convince the majority of what's needed. And so you wash, rinse, and repeat, and you're not moving anywhere. There could be some short-term stuff that you're like, oh, that's a win, but when you look at the big picture, how are we doing anything that's going to help solve this?
You know what I keep thinking about these days is about the world as a global economy and nationalism, and how our economies are based are on the nation states, and having groups of like-minded people within borders, for the most part, making up these nations, making decisions based on what's good for them. Well, I can't help but think, with the advent of the internet and Cloudlandia, the world we all seem to spend most of our time at, and over the last year or two with the polarization through the internet, it feels like our groups, our tribes, are being built cross-border without borders. The borders are now within the internet, within this Cloudlandia space.
Yeah.
We're now forming these alternate countries or communities or whatever you have it. And these are people who agree with each other. And all of a sudden, you're not going to get more than 20% support in a nationalist political election, perhaps, because no one's engaging in that anymore. The nation
there's no need to.
The nation state might be dying off, and we may be doing this either one globe or like a whole fractional division of smaller groups that just agree with each other.
Well,
and then they don't agree with other ones.
Well, the issue with the biggest fear from my perspective is nationalism, in which that you've got 20% of a population deciding on the other's 80% fate.
Yeah.
And you look at that in the States, with their two-party system, but they're so fractured and so polarized that, if they start getting protectionists, that's going to have ripple effects in the entire globe. I mean, one of the reasons why we've had such low interest rates, and it's been a very, prosperous, to a large degree, last 20, 30, 40, 50 years, is because things have gone global and there is a mobility to resources where you can, find cheaper labor for manufacturing. And then you've got, the people that are, like the United States, which has a very good monetary system and banking system, and like Canada's very good banking system. So we're able to, fund things and do things. But as soon as you become national and you start closing down your borders, prime is when, Trump went after China. And all of a sudden now their goods got more expensive because they put these freaking tariffs on Chinese product. So you start doing that, and all of a sudden now, even now they printed a ton of money and inflation is climbing. And then that then tells you to become more insular, which then is the opposite of what's going to allow us to kind of work our way out of it with the mobility and fluid. You can't go from a completely fluid economy to an insular economy and expect good things to happen, because we aren't expert manufacturers. China is now the expert manufacturer. They can do it cheaper, better, faster than anybody. But they rely on low income labor. So, and there's human rights violations. So, I mean, everything you touch, there's a disaster right behind the door,
Right.
and a justification for not doing it or what have you. But the alternatives are, what are the alternatives? Like, I think, having, strong leadership that tries to spread the tent bigger. So it doesn't have to have, answers for 10% of their population. It needs to come up with answers for 60% or 70% of the population, but then lead them. I don't care if somebody's leading me off a cliff, if it makes sense and they're sticking to their guns and they're doing it with integrity, then I'll follow them anywhere to a degree. But when you don't have integrity and you're just, catering to a small percentage, a niche percentage of the population, then you're really closing off all the doors to the others, which I think creates that animosity. And then you create that tribalism where you're if someone's not listening to you, you're going to go find people that will listen.
Right.
And
Which is easy these days. It's easy
yeah,
to
there's always
find,
somebody.
It's always easy to find someone who will agree with you. It's as easy to find them as it is to find people who don't agree with you.
Well, and then you've got things like Facebook that are propagating, misinformation, and those are the places where people are finding each other, in YouTube, and you go down these rabbit holes, and that's destructive as well. I mean, there needs to be, in the when there's lack of an oversight, the next kind of break or sort of catch-all is corporate integrity. And when you don't have that, then you literally don't have anything. Like, there's nobody that's keeping people safe from themselves in a way, because when you have a free flow of information, but it's not all accurate, then you've got some danger. So back in the day, the Department of Justice in the U.S. used to really crack down on bad actors, and you could expect that. Now you've got Apple and Facebook and all these companies worth $1 trillion. I mean, they broke up Standard Oil when it was worth, I think, $100 million. They broke it up into 5,
Really?
and that was back in the day, and they did that to protect people. So that was at $100 million.
Wow.
Back in the early 1900s. And so now you've got companies that are worth $1 trillion. They're worth more than some countries.
Well, most countries.
Most countries.
Yeah, there's only very few that surpass that.
So then what? Then where does it go? I mean, when you're trying to combat like major global issues like climate change without like a cohesive group or way to get information out there, or somebody who's the adult in the room that's going to actually stand up and show some leadership. And
who's got more influence? The American government with their 300 and however many million people that they're in control of.
They used to.
Maybe Facebook with 2
exactly.
billion people.
Exactly.
I mean, so now does Facebook have or do they need to be held accountable like a government is?
Listen, they should be. And the old days of the Department of Justice and even the European Union, they've got regulatory bodies that control, this type of thing. When a company becomes bigger than a country, and then has bigger, broader influence, but is also not acting in good faith. So there's many, many, many examples of Facebook not acting in good faith. And yet they still just get to do whatever they want to do, unaccountable.
Because there's no one bigger to stop them. Like
there's no one willing to do it.
Stop them? Because
the other thing is like how criminal organizations in this world now have discovered, and it's an example of Russia, for example. They have all these oligarchs. They say they're a free market, but they're not. So now the criminal organizations have figured out that they can actually make more money by taking over governments and influencing government and policy, and they get to write their own ticket, right?
Well, then they become bigger than, if you're controlling the government, you're bigger than them, even if you may be 10 people.
Exactly. And in the example of the United States is, there has been attacks on the United States, information warfare, who benefits if the United States crumbles? Like the United States always had that moral authority. Even though behind the scenes they're doing immoral things, most likely, they always had the moral authority. But that is now gone to a large degree. Like, who are you going to listen to when their own country doesn't even listen to each other? Yeah. Like, it's splitting at the seams. So that allows the global bad actors to just go in and pillage the good work of other people and take advantage of people and take advantage of the opportunity to make money off of, illicit stuff, right? Like basically criminal organizations doing crime, and, but they're doing it under the guise of a government that isn't holding anybody accountable. And,
Yeah, well, and, sorry, I was going to tie that back into something you said before about gambling and about how you can't really control your luck. But I was going to say something back then about opportunity, about, you might not be able to control your luck, but you can put yourself in the position where you can maximize your luck or maximize your ability to take advantage of your luck or not luck. And I think it's somewhat similar in our global environment today. We have lots of opportunities to screw things up, and most people are screwing them up.
Yeah.
But when there's an opportunity to screw something up so badly, there must be an equal opportunity to do well. And over the last 20 months, I can only speak for the people I know, the people I see. I see a real positive outcome to a globalized ethos, and that's what it is. It's not a national ethos anymore. Like now I relate more strongly to certain groups around the world than I do to most Canadian groups, right?
Yeah.
And I keep on thinking, what ethos do I follow? It's like, well, I follow an entrepreneurial ethos. And so I want what's best for entrepreneurialism, because I believe entrepreneurialism is one way we can get ourselves out of it, because entrepreneurs are inventive, ingenious. They're strongest under pressure.
Yeah, they can move quicker.
They move quicker.
The most risk tolerant.
Exactly. And we do things that benefit not just ourselves, but the people around us, because we know that will in turn benefit us when it comes back.
Of course.
And I don't think that that's how the governments of the world are thinking, or mega corporations are thinking. I think that if we want to turn things or feel more powerful in our space, we just have to be positive, communicate with people of like minds, educate when we can, and really just do what our hearts and our brains are telling us are the right things, because we're not wrong. I don't think that entrepreneurs are seldom incorrect when it comes to how they see the world. I think because we see opportunity, and what's the world with if it's not opportunistic? I mean, like we see food, we see an apple on a tree. That's opportunity
Yeah.
to eat something.
Yeah.
Like if we don't take that, we're crazy.
Yeah, and if there's a ton of it, then you share it.
Yeah.
You know, and it comes down to community building. And I think this idea that, you know, for every winner there's a loser, that becomes zero sum. But, you know, the tide floats all boats, as I've said numerous times on our show. And I
That's
think
the tagline of our show.
it should be the tagline of our show, because ultimately, you know, and the poker is a prime example of how you avoid bad luck is doing a bunch of good work to build your chip stack up. So when you do get unlucky, you're not out of the tournament.
Right.
So you're not at zero, right? So, you know, if you do that, if you build up your good works, you know, when no one's looking kind of thing, then you get a little unlucky, you still have chips to play the next hand. And that's sort of, you know, that's the contrary to a zero sum where, sure, in that situation, somebody's going to win and someone's going to lose, but it's not going to take all of their money. Right? It's going to allow them to survive and grow. And then, you know, eventually if you're there to get lucky, then you're going to benefit from that. And I think that sums up life in general. Is like, if you're just looking out for yourself, then that's a pretty lonely place to be in. And you're not really preparing for the bad luck, right?
Well, you're not preparing for any kind of luck, are you? If you're just looking for yourself.
You're hoping to step on people and grow from stepping on people, or build your business on the backs of others. And I think that is something that I know in the Bread and Butter Collective is not what we're about. We are about sharing and bringing people together so that we can all grow. And I think that ultimately is the baseline of how we get ourselves out of this. And I think even, you know, with what's happened in the Fraser Valley, and that's a major food infrastructure for British Columbia that's now underwater. So, you know, we as a community need to come together. And it's not like we need to have help from, I mean, we probably do need national help for sure, like federal funding, but, you know, ultimately at the end of the day, we're the ones that are going to be impacted mostly by it because we eat a lot of the food that it produces ourselves. So it's up to us to band together. And, you know, what better way to band together is when you feel comfortable in sharing information and helping each other. But if you go down the road of you know, this polarization where you don't look at people as their friend, you look at them wary and without trust, it's going to take a lot longer to build that coalition of people that are going to help. And I think, you know, the future for us as a society, especially in the short term, is we're going to be dealing with these cataclysmic events. Like if you think of all the stuff we've dealt with just in the last 2 or 3 years, that's in, you know, the previous 30 years, you wouldn't have you've dealt with maybe 1 or 2 of those things.
Right.
So now we're dealing with a multiple, in this year alone, we dealt with catastrophic forest fires. And then now we got catastrophic flooding. You know, we know it's coming down the pipe. So let's all start working together to figure out how we survive, you know, the bad luck, which is we're in, but then also try to build a strategy so that we can actually really kind of move ourselves forward and feel good about it. I mean, you know, nobody can really feel good about the situation we've had the last 2 or 3 years. But I'm hopeful that, you know, a lot of this stuff, including the pandemic, we've seen unprecedented, you know, groups working together and helping each other. And, you know, I think that is the inspiration, not the opposite, where you look at, you know, groups like Facebook and YouTube and other countries are still kind of bad actors doing things that undermine, you know, that positive, you know,
they're so divisive, and if you want to find someone who doesn't agree with you, that's the easiest place to find it,
exactly,
right? But yeah, at the same token, if you take like Zoom, for instance, that's sort of a social media tool that we can use as a real positive influence. I mean, we've been able to maintain businesses and communications and just through simple tools like Zoom, which before the pandemic we we were all poo-pooing.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know, no one wanted to do a Zoom meeting, but now like I'm not going to go to Vancouver if I don't have to, and save myself two days, a couple $100, and have a 2-hour Zoom meeting.
Yeah,
and
I mean, you
bada
get the
bing, bada
same
boom,
benefit out of it. You know, like that's the thing is there's
it brings
benefit.
it brings us all together. It brings more people together in an easier way. And if you have a positive focus and you look on life with positive focus, those are the people you're going to find.
Totally.
And
I mean, you can find any group that you want depending on what message you're putting out there.
Sure. I guess I guess I'm trying to bring it from a doomsday conversation to, because all those things felt real heavy, but at the same token, through all this chaos, there is opportunity, and you need to have your eyes open, and you need to be having these kinds of conversations in order to see the positivity, see the silver linings, and reach for them. And if you don't see them, how do you make them?
Yeah.
How do you make the positivity out of this?
And I think part of it is through the discussions, there's breadcrumbs for how to start getting traction on the more positive things. Like, through, as long as you're able to communicate and debate without, finger pointing and, alienating the other party. That's one of the more frustrating things I find in this day and age is like people are just really quick to say, no, I don't agree with that. It's like, well, let's have a discussion. Like, let's hear your points. I mean, the fact of the matter is like now, and this is my fear is, being an environmental person like I am, and I could say I am an environmental activist. I mean, all my businesses are carbon neutral. I've gone out of my way to vet what we're doing as well.
You stop burning tires in the middle.
Yeah,
of the night
exactly. So I'm like, it's not to say, but I have contrary to the mainstream as far as the environmental people who want to just like shut down our entire oil sector. I have the opposite view where I think we need to lean into ours, force others to clean up their act, but then strongly influence countries like China and India to move off of coal, and start there. And also, the whole nuclear, like we've solved it. So the risk of moving away in the way we are is we will be gas shortage. Like we live in a country that's -0, majority of time. Like we can't afford to be an unstable energy, country. We can't. We will freeze to death.
We need to figure out how to make heat out of snow.
Exactly. Well, and maybe we'll have winter heat domes or something. I don't know. Who knows what's going to happen? But I do think that you need to think outside the box, and I don't think you just have these people that are just closed off. And I know that like I've interacted with Gerald Butts, who's Trudeau's kind of right-hand guy behind the scenes, and he's worked for World Wildlife Foundation and all these environmental groups over the history, and these keep pounding the anti-oil thing, and I'm like, well, why? What about coal? Like, why are we not stopping our coal exports? Like, why would we not do that? And then he blocks me on Twitter. So I'm like, okay. And then Zipporah Berman, who's like an environmental activist too, blocked me again. Just talking about coal. Like, it's just like, I'm not contrary to what, do we need to get off oil? 100%. Do we have a solution to do that today? No, we don't. Anybody says that we do is dreaming of unicorns. That's just my view and my opinion of the practicality of what we're talking about.
But coal is something we don't need. That's only something that we export, right?
Exactly.
Like there's not a lot of coal burning
in Alberta. I think they've banned them. I don't know whether it's happened already or whether it's happening. We have moved ourselves off coal, but we're still exporting coal.
Okay. Because I'm a West Coast kid, and I don't know if I've ever seen a coal plant. Really,
are you joking? Have you taken the ferry?
Yes. Oh, okay.
Yeah, to the left.
Yes. Okay.
As you're going
That's
in,
coal.
that
That's some
whole
coal, right?
thing is coal. And there's another. We have two coal.
Yeah, but that's export coal, right?
Export
it's
coal.
not. It's not a big smokestack downtown Vancouver.
No. We're exporting it.
Energy.
We're exporting
Right.
it to the countries that
They're
are
just burning
creating
it in open
exactly.
pits.
Yeah, exactly. So
I get your
like
point.
how do you have integrity in what you're doing when you do that? Like it just doesn't add up to me. So now all of a sudden I don't believe anything else that's being said because, well, if you don't think that is a problem, then if you're not starting there, like how are we ever going to have integrity in what we're doing? Like to me, it doesn't make sense. And yet we're adding carbon taxes and all this stuff. Like taxation is not a solution. Like that's the slowest burning thing, especially when you're prosperous, because you can afford to pay the taxes. Who cares, right? But well, then what's actually happening? Like we're still, doing all the things that we always do, but we're just paying more for it. Okay, so why not take that money and invest it in innovation that'll actually make change? But start by cutting off what you're doing that's bad, right? Like why are we exporting coal? Like why?
Money.
I get it.
Right?
I get it.
That's why.
I know, I get it. But how are you doing that with integrity?
How do you justify it?
Exactly. You don't. You can't. And then as soon as it's talked about, you're just like, oh, okay, you're shut up. No one's like, we've gone by that big pile of coal for as long as I've been alive. And when you go downtown Coal Harbor, go downtown Vancouver, and you're looking at it again. And those ships are just being sailed out. But yet we have a moratorium on tankers for oil. But yet we can send out tankers of coal to China,
and send out all our raw logs.
Yeah, and send out all our raw logs and our water and sell our hydro to the States and all of that stuff. I mean, these are complex issues, but I think it starts with integrity and just a full comprehensive view of what you're doing and why you're doing it, because what's been happening is not working, right?
It kind of feels like, now that you put it that way, it feels like the country should be more like a business and operate strictly on their core values. Like, I don't remember ever seeing Canada's core values. What are they? No one lists them.
One core value is free healthcare as a human
value?
right.
I
think
we
it's
got a
in there.
tertiary. I don't have a family doctor.
But you have free healthcare. You just don't have a physician to administer it.
I've got really, really slow free healthcare, and it's only free up to a certain point. And if I want it faster, I got to pay for it.
Well, listen, let's not. I know you're being the devil's advocate. Our healthcare system is by and far the best model that's out there, in my view. But that goes to the point of the core values of us as a country, and
is that our only core value?
No,
though?
well, I get basically.
Should we not have a vote perhaps on what our core values are? Should they be more environmental, or is that what our 4-year election cycle is supposed to be? But it's gotten so far off track that we're supposed to elect people that we believe have the same core values that we do, and that's why we elect them, and then they just turn around and screw us.
But the fact of the matter is, it's when it's 20% of the population, you're never going, like, how are you going to get a quorum that's going to agree? And it's not to say that the party that's in there isn't the best option. I don't know. Like, I don't personally think so, but there is no other option in my mind. Like, the state of politics today has never been worse in the world. And, it really comes down to just a lack of integrity. So, if I was to run, first off, in Canada, you have to be able to be bilingual. So that eliminates and it's not to say, could I learn French? Probably. I've taken it, but obviously if I wanted to or was going to do something with it, I probably would be fluent in French, but I'm not. And I don't think at 51 I can become fluent in French. I don't know, maybe I could. But that eliminates, it's not to say that I would run or could run or would get elected or whatever, but there's barriers to entry in our country that don't exist. And in the States, you don't have to be bilingual in the States. you basically can, if you can speak English, you're great. Obviously, speaking Spanish would help. But there's a lot of barriers to entry, and even just financial and who in this day and age, who wants to put themselves up for the abuse and the whatever. But saying that, I would love somebody who had integrity, who would just lay out their plan, stick to it, and see it through. And
Yeah.
I mean, if in my business, if I wasn't integral, I couldn't do what I'm doing, and I would not have staff and employees following me. So I have to be true to what our mission is, and you do type up a mission, and but I don't know what our mission is in our country anymore.
No, and that's kind of my point. Wouldn't it be better if our country operated more as a business, as opposed to a nation state?
Well, I think any organization needs a set of core values. So regardless, my hesitancy to agree with it being run like a business, not all businesses run with ethics. Most don't. And I don't think, when it depends on what your purpose is, a lot of businesses' purpose is to provide shareholder value, right? But my personal purpose in business is to provide value to the community. And I put that first. So I think as a government organization, that would be a good place to start. And I think many governments have the intention of that, but at the end of the day, when they could only attract 20% of the population to vote for you,
Right.
like who are you really serving?
And that's only 20% of the people who are eligible to vote.
Well, that actually voted.
Yeah, voted.
So
not even of the eligible.
Sure,
voters.
I mean, there's
Right,
people
so-
that don't vote that probably would agree with their policies too, or not. I don't know, but the only way it counts is if you actually get to the ballot box and vote. And that's even declining over and over the years. So you're literally you're taking your hands off the steering wheel of any influence in any way, shape, or form. But and again, where's the vetting of the candidates? And
and there goes your accountability with all of that too. You're throwing everything away with the baby in the bathwater.
Yeah.
And I guess when I say that I'd like to see the country run more like a business, I guess what I mean to say is I'd like to see the country run in the businesses like that I associate with.
Yeah.
And because of heartaches in the world,
Yeah.
I've become bonded closer with a bigger group of people
Yeah.
who are like-minded
Yeah.
through the Bread and Butter Collective.
Yeah.
And that's formed part of my opinion, shaped part
Yeah.
of it, and has put a real focus on positivity in what I'm doing in my
Yeah.
business, because we are a product of the 5 people we surround ourselves with the
Yeah.
most, or whatever they say. And if all of a sudden I'm hanging around with really smart business people who do a good job, then I want my country to run like that, because that's what I'm seeing right now.
100%.
And so I know that not all businesses run like that, and it would be and you can't just operate a country like you would a business. But what I mean is to have the principles and the commitment and the accountability that a positive business would have. Wouldn't that be? It would just be idealistic,
Totally.
I guess.
But it's easy to do, and it comes down to transparency. And part of all that what you're just talking about is we're able to have that group and that organization because we're honest and transparent with each other, and we share core values, which is basically what I think you're talking about. And when you pit people against each other, and politically that's what they do, and whether they have to do it or not, I'm not a believer that they have to do it. I'm a believer that if you actually put out a mandate and a policy that is a big tent that a lot of people can, you don't all have to agree always, and you won't. But I think that also generates some good opportunities for innovation and new ideas as well. But you can't be like, oh, they're bad, I'm good, because that is very black and white, and that's a zero sum.
It's just not true.
And it's not true, and it's
Yeah.
zero sum. Like if you actually look at the policies, environmental policies between the Conservatives in Canada and the Liberals, they're literally like when Trudeau won in 2015, their environmental mandates or policies would have been, I think it was like 40 megatons difference. Like you're talking about, for Canada, to put it into perspective, I think we're at like 220 megatons of emissions, and the Conservatives would have had us at 260 and the Liberals would have had us at 220 or something in total emissions by whatever date. So to put it in perspective, China produces 16,000 megatons. So we're fighting over these scraps of differences, but yet people are feeling like it's the end of the world if the Conservatives got in. And I'm not saying that it wouldn't impact in certain ways, but overall, does it really, like all this fighting, all this money and all this stuff, does that really produce change? Does it really impact anything? And I would argue it doesn't. But yet here we are in our little world fighting with each other about the different ideologies between a Conservative Party or a Liberal Party. And what is it producing? I think it's not producing anything, except now, we don't like the Conservatives, or we don't like the Liberals, or we don't like the NDP, or we don't like the Green Party, or it's just all bullshit. Yeah. Like why can't we just all, formulate a plan that works best for the majority, right? Because that's literally how life works, and get behind somebody. But the person you need to get behind, man, I think I honestly wish it was a female. I just feel like women are just better. I think they're calmer. I think they're more practical. And we've let men rule the world forever. It's
gotten us this far that we want to get out of it. So let's have a switch.
Yeah,
for sure.
But I mean, how do you attract people that can actually make good difference? I don't know what the answer to that is.
Yeah, well, in Canada, you could pay them more, but really, I mean,
this is thankless work.
It is a
You're talking
thankless
about
job.
Like if you're going to run for mayor, and I'm a proponent for start local, city council, mayor, province, federal, whatever. But somebody's got to want to do it for the bigger purpose. So they've got to want to believe in their ability to bring people together under a message that makes sense. But I mean, you've got the Maxime Berniers of the world who are doing that in a negative way on the far right and trying to polarize people. And it's more common to try to bring the fringe people together than it is about to bring the average person together, which is,
well, it's easier, isn't it?
It's easier to attract.
You don't need to have a group of intellectuals who are running the country.
Well, it doesn't even have to be intellectuals. It's just compassionate people,
Yeah.
people that want to help the community and help their neighbor. I mean, it's really simple. Like, to me, it's basic. It's kind of what we do every day. And,
I think that's why it's so frustrating.
Yeah.
Is because we do this every day in
Yeah.
our microcosms of our businesses.
Yeah.
We're in charge of our own environment. We're in charge of our own health care. We're in charge of everything is like a microcosm for us. And we seem to be operating our world's fairly well.
Yes.
And we're still here.
And we're feeling good about it, and we are
we're
actually making a
positive.
difference in the community.
And our people appreciate what we're doing, right?
Yeah. But maybe that's enough. Maybe that's where we're looking at this in the wrong way.
Maybe groups like Bread and Butter need to spread. Maybe we need to make these community groups. I guess it's grassroots politics, isn't it?
Yeah.
And grassroots movements start with people of like minds in crisis, getting together, trying to improve their little part of the world. And if everyone's doing that,
well, that's where it comes down to about the municipal government and things like that. Is like focus in your own backyard, and then build there. Because, like you said, I mean, if good things are happening in our community, then other communities will look at that and go, oh, wow, this is an example of what's working. And hopefully we'll replicate it. And I think that's where you start. And, maybe that we just talked in a big circle, but maybe it's not about the big and trying to influence all this global change, or it's just about, hey, let's start making a difference in our own backyards.
Well,
and
yeah, and with our group, the Bread and Butter Collective, I mean, we're talking about right now how to write down our processes and how we came to being, writing that down so it could be transferred to other communities
and
around
the messaging
the country and
around
the messaging
it.
that we're trying to do, right? So maybe you're right. Maybe we don't start at the top. Maybe we start at the bottom. Maybe this is a grassroots thing that we need to do. And maybe we are doing the best job we can do just by doing what we're doing. We operate our businesses every day. We have a collective of like-minded businesses who all want the same thing, which is the betterment of our people and our communities and our suppliers. And if everyone thought that way, if we can spread our message out and have that catch on across the country, maybe I will still believe in a nation state at the end of the day, and not.
I'll believe in that nation state, a nation state that focuses on community and building each other up and helping each other is what I'll support 100% of the way. And I think you're exactly right. Like, let's be the examples in what we can control. And this is going back right to the very beginning, talking about controlling your luck and putting yourself in a position to absorb bad luck and being in control of your own destiny. And how we do that is by building the world that we want to live in, which is, a world that supports each other.
Yeah, being open, having conversation for one thing is one of the biggest thing, and that's about being open, right? Is you have to initiate the conversation with anyone, everyone. Always be open to talk, and always have your eyes open. Always be positive if you can.
100%. Well, I think that's a great way to end this podcast.
What, on the word positivity?
Word positivity.
Oh my God, I love that word.
There's we went through a whole river, ebbs and flows there to get back to let's just be positive and community build.
Right, because otherwise it does feel like it's a bit much to chew off.
Well, and we went full circle because we couldn't chew that off.
No, but what we can chew off is everything we do every day. We're already chewing.
We're chewing it.
We're chewing it,
and we're swallowing the odd time, and we're sustaining ourselves, thankfully.
I am hungry now. Now I just want more positivity.
Yes, more positivity. Thank you, Sam.
Thanks, Calen. Man, it's nice to be across the table from you in reality, not in Cloudlandia.
I love it. And our next episode, we are going to be talking about the environment with Jill Doucette from Synergy. And she's made a living of greening businesses, and she's very much in the weeds with the environment and assisting businesses in doing that. So
I've been working with her for a long time.
Yeah, me too.
Well.
She's fantastic, and we're having her on our next episode, which will be our last for season 2. Season 2 done and dusted.
Wow, it's almost like it's going to be a 2-parter environmental series to end our second season.
I think, which is suitable, seeing we're in an environmental crisis right now.
It sure feels appropriate.
We're so topical.
We are. Like cream. We're topical.
Oh, Sam.
All right,
I love
brother.
Bread and Butter Collective's membership includes the following local businesses: 2% Jazz, 900 Degrees Wood-Fired Pizzeria, Agrius, Big Wheel Burger, Blue Mountain Solutions, Bodega Tapas Wine Bar, Brentwood Bay Village Emporium, Nourish and Charlotte the Quail, Victoria Chocolate and Company, Drum Roaster Coffee, Habit Coffee, Foo Asian Street Food, the Culinary Arts Program at Camosun, Cafe Fantastico, Fall Epi, Harold Street Brewworks, Hey Happy, House of Botang, Hoyne Brewing, Jenny Marie's Cracker Company, La Pasta, La Rue Patisserie, Mocha House, Part and Parcel, Poco a Pinto Bar, Pizzeria Prima Strada, Rain Dogs, Roast, Table 9 Consulting, Sherwood Cafe and Bar, Sweets by Selena, The Collective Wine Bar and Kitchen, The Drake, Tapa Bar, Taco Stand Al Pastor, Took, The Whole Beast, The Wienery, and Zambries.
To hear more from the Bread and Butter Collective, go to checknews.ca/podcasts on Check Plus, or find us on your favorite podcasting platform.